And welcome to Chentex Multimedia live streaming through your device straight from Brisbane. And it's a funny sort of a day, with being heavy rains in the last few days, but the weather's changing a little bit. Hey, today we have the real estate update coming up at 10, hence our update, which will be a short one right now. Well, before we go any further, let's take a very quick look at what's happening with the weather. With that, let's welcome to Dilraj.
Good morning everyone. Weather forecast for the rest of today is maximum 26 degree. Brisbane area is cloudy with very high chance of showers becoming less likely late this afternoon and evening. Wind southeasterly 15 to 35 km per hour becoming light in the late evening. Fire danger is low to moderate. Sun protection is recommended till 10 to 3 in the afternoon, and UV index is predicted to reach 8, that is very high. Till tomorrow, stay safe and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much for that update, Dilraj. And as we know that the weather is still wet, so please do take care on those roads. Well, right now, let's take a look at what's happening. And here's this announcement that was made yesterday with our Prime Minister. And right after that, we will go and take a look at the Reserve Bank of Australia's rates decision.
Another big step today with the opening of the Tasman. It is 6 months ago, almost, that Australia opened up to New Zealand, and I'm very pleased that the New Zealand government has decided that two-way travel will commence Monday fortnight. Prime Minister Ardern called me last night and we had a very positive discussion about this. It's something we've been talking about for some time. And this is the first of many more steps to come, I believe, as we get back to a more normal position, not only over the course of this year but beyond. This is an important first step. Australia and New Zealand have led the way when it comes to managing COVID. We have ensured that both our countries have been, despite dealing with the virus, have not suffered the same types of virus impacts that we have seen in so many other countries around the world. And the fact that we now can combine again will mean jobs, it will mean people reunited, it will mean many opportunities as those normal relations are restored between Australia and New Zealand. And so I very much appreciate the arrangement that the New Zealand government has come to today. We welcome them back, as indeed Kiwis will be welcoming Aussies, and all in time for Anzac Day too, which is tremendous to see that occur in the true Anzac spirit of our two nations coming together again. This will mean, importantly, jobs for Australia. I've already made major announcements about our travel sector. And it is true that the Trans-Tasman route is one of the most busy in terms of volume. That means more planes in the air, it means more jobs on the ground and in the air as well for our airlines. It means further support for our travel agents who book many of the first of the international travel that we'll see for Australians. And so I'm sure that will be welcomed by those in the travel sector and in the aviation sector. On jobs more broadly, more good news today. With wonderful news of 7.4% increase in ANZ job ads today to 190,542 jobs that are out there right now. This is the highest level in over 12 years. And it's further positive news, further good news that demonstrates the comeback of the Australian economy. When you combine these events together, what we're seeing is Australia continue to move forward and our own part of the world moving forward between Australia and New Zealand, and we can welcome that into the future. Happy to take questions.
Prime Minister, what's the update today on the number of vaccinations?
Ladies and gentlemen, there you are, the travel bubble being announced, and our Prime Minister is pretty positive that this is a good move. Of course, it is a good move, and of course we will need to keep all our security checks in place, making sure that we don't bring in unnecessary travel on our own selves right now. Well, right now the second news that I did say that we were going to do is provide you an update of Reserve Bank and its decision. So at its meeting, the Reserve Bank decided to maintain the current policy settings, which includes the target as we know 10 basis points for the case rate and the yield of 3-year Australian government bond, as well as the parameters for the term funding facility and the government bond purchase program. The rollout of vaccines is supporting the recovery of global economy, although the recovery is uneven, while there is still considerable uncertainties regarding the outlook. The central case has improved. So that is some good news. Global trade has picked up and the commodity prices are mostly higher at the start of the year. Inflation remains low and central bank targets. So sovereign bond yields have increased over the recent months due to the positive news on vaccine and additional fiscal stimulus in United States. Inflation expectations have also lifted from near record lows to now closer to central bank's targets. The 3-year government bond yield in Australia is the board's target of 10 basis points, and lending rates for most borrowers are at a record low. The Australian dollar remains on the upper end of the range of recent years. The economic recovery in Australia is well underway and is stronger than expected, which is a good news. The unemployment rate fell to 5.8% in February and the number of people with a job has returned to the pre-pandemic level. GDP increased by a strong 3.1% in the December quarter, boosted by a further lift in household consumption as the health situation improved. The recovery is expected to continue with above-trend growth this year and next. Household and business balance sheets are in good shape and should continue to support spending. Nevertheless, wage and price pressures are subdued and are expected to remain so for some years. The economy is operating with considerable spare capacity and unemployment is still too high. It will take some time to reduce this spare capacity for the labour market to be tight enough to generate wage increases that are consistent with achieving the inflation target. In the short term, CPI inflation is expected to rise temporarily because of the reversal of some COVID-19 related price reductions. Looking through this, underlying inflation is expected to remain below 2% over the next 2 years. Housing markets have strengthened further with price increasing in most markets. Housing credit growth to owner-occupiers has picked up with strong demand for first home buyers. In contrast, investor credit growth remains subdued given the environment of rising housing prices and low interest rate. The bank will be monitoring trends in housing borrowing carefully, and it is important that lending standards are maintained. The board remains committed to the 3-year government bond yield target of 10 basis points. Later in the year, it will consider whether to retain the April 2024 bond as a target bond to shift to the next maturity. The initial 100 billion government bond purchase program is almost complete and the second 100 billion program will commence next week. Beyond this, the bank is prepared to undertake further bond purchases if doing so would assist with the progress towards the goal of full employment and inflation. Authorized deposit-taking institutions now have drawn 95 billion under the term funding facility and have access to further 95 billion. Since the start of 2020, the RBI's balance sheet has increased around 215 billion. These various monetary measures are continuing to help the economy by keeping financing costs very low, contributing to the lower exchange rate than otherwise, and supporting the supply of credit and household balance sheets. Together, monetary and fiscal policy are contributing to the recovery of an aggregate demand in the pickup of employment. The board is committed to maintaining highly supportive monetary conditions until its goals are achieved. The board will not increase the rate until actual inflation is sustainably within the 2 to 3% target range. For this to occur, wage growth will have to be materially higher than it is currently. This will require significant gain in employment and a return to a tighter labour market. the board does not expect these conditions to be met until 2024 at the earliest. So there you go. That's the latest from RBA, and as we mentioned that we will be discussing that in today's news. So right now we will look at some of the functions and events taking place in and around Brisbane, and don't forget that many of these functions have actually been cancelled as well. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now let's join with our Premier to get an update from Queensland.
Queensland. Good morning, distinguished members of the press pack. Sorry? Well, hopefully everyone's had a good holiday, so let's hope so. Anyway, good morning, Queensland. And can I start by saying some very good news today. We have 6 new cases, but they're all in hotel quarantine, so 0 community transmission. This is wonderful news. I'm quite sure that everyone's feeling thankful out there, and thank you for continuing to wear your mask. The mask, that's very important. We have 73 active cases in our hospitals, and the Health Minister will update you very shortly on vaccinations. There have been 5,396 in the last 24 hours, and our total vaccinations to date are 94,762, which is good news. Tragically, a gentleman has passed away. Dr. Young will talk more about that. He was a dual British PNG national, but of course our condolences go to his family. He was a very sick gentleman. He was medevaced from Papua New Guinea to Queensland, and I do want to thank our staff that looked after him and took care of him. So thank you to all the staff that have been involved in that as well. So of course good news about the bubble that's going to exist between New Zealand and Australia. I had the opportunity to speak to the New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern yesterday, and of course I invited her to Queensland at the earliest opportunity, and I hope that her family does take up that opportunity. She was out here, I think from memory, for the Commonwealth Games, which was just over 3 years ago, and of course I know she does like holidaying here. I know she's got a very busy job, but hopefully she can come here in the not too distant future and experience once again all the beautiful things that Queensland has to offer. And of course we've got National Cabinet coming up on Friday. Of course this is going to be very important. I know front and centre will undoubtedly be the vaccine rollout and making sure that we get transparency in terms of our numbers from both the state and the Commonwealth. We just want to remind everyone that we're responsible for 30% of the vaccine rollout. The federal government's responsible for 70% of that vaccine rollout. I also will be writing to the Prime Minister today about another issue that I'd like on the agenda this Friday at National Cabinet, and that is to hold a National Women's Summit. I honestly believe that now is the right time. Back in 2016, when I was, I think, the only woman on COAG, I actually asked back then the COAG leaders to support my proposal to have a national summit on the prevention of domestic and family violence. This was really important. It was attended by the Prime Minister and all of the leaders, key stakeholders, and it was really good to come together to talk about such an important issue. But I actually think the time is now right for our country to have a National Women's Summit. I think this is really important. To look at gender inequality, to look at economic inequality, to look at actions to address the gender pay gap, actions to address the superannuation gap, issues around addressing issues of affordable childcare. This is a huge issue for women out there in our community. You know, time and time again, my sisters have told me and other members of the community how expensive it is for childcare when you're working as well. So I think these are really big issues in terms of women's equality. I also think issues of sexual harassment in the workplace is really important. But what we've seen over the last few months is a huge wave of support for women to have their voices heard. And I think the time is now right to have a National Women's Summit. So I'll be writing to the Prime Minister today. I'll be asking the other leaders to support this. I'm happy to host it here in Queensland, or it can be in Canberra. That can be at the Prime Minister's discretion. But I think the time is now right. You know, every week our Cabinet meets, and you know, I think it was really good to see yesterday the Prime Minister meeting with members of his Women's Task Force. But our Cabinet meets, we've got nearly 50% women in our Cabinet. We meet every single week and we talk about these issues constantly. We've been able to make huge inroads in Queensland when it comes to making sure that we have 50% women on our government boards, making sure that we address issues like domestic and family violence, making sure that we've set up a task force headed by respected former Judge Margaret McMurdo to look at the way women are treated in the criminal justice system. I mean, we sit around the Cabinet table and talk about these complex issues all of the time. And now is the time for women's voices throughout Australia to be heard. And I honestly believe that if we are going to achieve equality in this country, then now is the time. Now is the time for us to have a National Women's Summit. So I'll hand over to the Health Minister to talk a little bit more about, Dr Young first and then the Health Minister. Thank you.
So there were, ladies and gentlemen, that update from our Premier, and good news is that, you know, the travel bubble, and as the Prime Minister said that he had spoken to the Prime Minister of New Zealand, and so has our Premier, and our Premier has actually invited her to come to Queensland, which is good news, and she's also supporting the International Women's Summit to be, you know, the proposal that she will take to the table when the National Cabinet meets on this Friday. Well, it is good cause, and I know that she always supports our movement as well, White Ribbon, and they've always been very supportive of all our endeavours. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have for you in this segment, and don't forget that around 10 a.m. today, we bring to you today's special segment, which is Real Estate Update with Usu Chandra. So until then, it's goodbye from me. It's wonderful to have your company as usual. We will from time to time go live at some odd times as well. That would be as and when some important announcement comes in that we need to bring to the community. We will go live, and of course, the best thing is to follow us, like us, and have that bell icon pressed on your YouTube channel if you're watching via YouTube channel, and you will get notified whenever we go live. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you so much for joining into this segment, and don't forget that from 10 a.m. we'll bring to you the Real Estate Update with Usu Chandra of Globenet right here on this channel. Until then, it's goodbye from me. Stay safe.